Hey guys, so today I'm going to be filming an all-time favorite book video. So since I'm still fairly new to booktube, you guys don't know a lot about my favorite books because I just not had the chance to talk about them yet on here. So I figured what better way than to make a video telling you guys about some of my all-time favorites. First of all, a couple things. Please ignore my nails, they are so bad. I'm going to a couple concerts in the next few weeks, so I'm waiting to get them done for them. So just, they're really grown out and yeah, we're just going to ignore them, okay? Also, if you guys don't like these books, that is totally okay. These are just books I love. These are not all my favorites. I didn't want this video to be too long, so I just put some of them in there. I will probably make a part 2 in a few months' time. You may think if it's like one of my favorite books, it will be a 5 stars. But while most of these books are 5 stars, they're not actually all. That's because sometimes I'll have a book I consider a favorite, but there'll be like 1 or maybe 2 things are just a bit off about it where I couldn't like give it a 5 stars, but it's still like a favorite in my heart. Anyway, we are just gonna get started because I don't want this video to be a million years long. So first of all, we obviously have to start off with my favorite series, probably the Cruel Prince series. I'm aware this is a very basic series to put in my favorites. I have very basic tastes. This is a trilogy, so you have the Cruel Prince, the Wicked King, and the Queen of Nothing, and then there is a novella which comes after this, which is this book in Tarrant's POV, which I have read. And then there's the How the King of Elfhame Learned Hate Stories, which is like a novella collection. And then there's the spin-off series, which is going to be a duology, and it starts with The Stolen Heir. I love these books so much. While admittedly, looking back, they are undoubtedly not the best books I've ever read. I have definitely got better books in here. I would still, without a doubt, consider this my all-time favourite series because, if you're not aware, I was in a bit of a reading slump for 2 to 3 years, a couple years back, and this was one of the series I read when I first started getting back into the reading in late 2021, I want to say. This was truly the first series I read when I got back into reading, when I was like, wow, this is why I love reading. I truly believe this series helped me rediscover my love for reading. And it was also the first like proper fantasy series I read, which is now obviously, if you watch any of my videos, my favourite genre. So this series really helped me discover fantasy and my love for it. Admittedly, if I was to read it now, I probably would not have the same feelings about it, but because of like the nostalgia and just the love I have for what this series showed me, nothing compares. I really need to do a reread, but I just keep putting it off because I'm so scared they're just not gonna live up to my expectations in my head from how I felt the first time I read these. This series follows Jude. Now Jude, she is a human living in the Fae world, and the Fae, they really don't like humans. They're very manipulative and they basically just trick and treat the humans awfully. Jude is in the Fae world because like 10 years ago or something, her parents were basically murdered by this Fae who was actually her older sister's half parent. And then he like took Jude, her older sister, and her twin sister back to the Fae world, and they've been living there and they've been raised by him, and it's basically kind of just her trying to survive in the Fae world with all their like tricks and manipulation. She's also getting like bullied at school by this like group of kids who is like led by this guy called Cardin, who you probably heard about him. He's like the youngest son of the King of Elfhame, which is like the name of the Fae world. The series is most well known for the enemies to lovers romance subplot. It is a subplot. Don't go in this expecting some great romance because that is not what this book is about. I am sick of people hating on this book because they wanted more from the romance when the publishers and the authors never advertised it as a romance. But I obviously love the romance. This was one of the first book couples where I was truly like rooting for them and obsessed. And this is also the series that made me discover my love for enemies to lovers, so I owe a lot to this. It's also got lots of like politics and betrayals. It's just so good. And Jude is the main character. She's undoubtedly still to this day one of my all-time favorite book main characters. My biggest pet peeve in fantasy books is when you have main characters, particularly female main characters, who like don't stand up for themselves and always need to be saved by men. And Jude, she's just the complete opposite of it, and you'll very much see throughout this video that I love a good badass female main character. That will undoubtedly make the books a million times better. The way I feel about this series, nothing can compare, honestly. And the way I felt when I first read the series, I will compare every other book to. So the next series we have is the We Hunt the Flame duology. I have these gorgeous Illumicrate editions. These are probably my favorite books in terms of like writing, plot, characters. So these follow Zafira and Nazia. So Zafira is the hunter. There's a lot of misogyny in this world. Women are not treated well, so she has to disguise as a man in order to hunt food for this village, and she hunts in this forest called the Oz. Now, if people go in the Oz, they go like crazy. Zafira, she can somehow like hunt in the Oz and she's fine. So follow Nazia. Now, Nazia is the Sultan's son, and he has basically been trained since birth to be an assassin, and he's called like the Prince of Death. Now, in this world, there used to be magic, but like something happened for it to be taken away. And basically, to get the magic back, Zafira is tasked to go on this like trip through like the Oz to this little like place in the middle of it. Basically like retrieve this like artifact thing to get magic back. However, Nazir is tasked to go kill the hunter and to get the artifact thing for himself. This series is just phenomenal. It's a YA series, but in my opinion, it is written very adult. Characters, again, Zafira, she's just the ultimate badass main character that I'm just looking for in my books. And again, it has a amazing enemies to lovers romance subplot. You've got like the knife to throat scenes. It's iconic. Nazir as well, I loved him so much. The things he went through, I mean the things all the characters went through, and not only were the main characters great, but it had a phenomenal cast of side characters, which was just great to see. I mean, I just loved them all so much, and I truly did not want this series to end. Found family in this book is probably some of my all-time favorite found family. If you love Six of Crows, which is another one of my favorites, but I'm not going to include it in this video, I think you'll really enjoy this, because while it's not remotely similar, I feel like the found family aspect and the whole like quest to retrieve a certain object type of thing was very reminiscent of Six of Crows for me. But don't go into it expecting like anything particularly similar. It's just a couple things that reminded me of it when reading it. I just love this series, and I truly cannot wait until Hafsah Faisal releases her new release. And that was this series. So good, definitely recommend. Another phenomenal series is these are upside down. The These Violent Delights series by the one and only Chloe Gong. Chloe Gong has without a doubt become my favorite author. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is her entire backlist right here, and I genuinely cannot wait until her newest releases. She's also releasing books so quickly. She released this book in September, this in February, and she has 2 more books coming out this year. She's like insane. This is an original duology, These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, and then we have a spin-off series set a few years later following different characters, and we have Fair Lady Fortune, and then there's going to be a second one. And then this is a novella collection, Last Final Call. However, it like follows characters from this series instead of characters from this series, if that makes sense. It's kind of confusing. Violent Delights is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920 Shanghai following Roma and Juliet. They are the heirs of rival gangs, and they, when they were younger, I think they were like 15 or something, had a little bit of a romance. But something kind of happened and kind of ended on a bad note, and Juliet ended up leaving. Now it's like 5 years later and Juliet is back. However, there's this like kind of madness going around where people are basically like tearing their throats out. So Juliet and Roma are forced to work together to discover what is going on and what is causing this madness. Obviously, it has a good old enemies to lovers to enemies to maybe lovers to enemies again subplot. Can you guess my favorite trope? Again, we have another incredibly badass female main character. These books are just so good. I genuinely, other than Kingdom of Ash, but like Kingdom of Ash, it does not count. Other than Kingdom of Ash, no book has ever made me cry as much as this one did. And then for Chloe Gong to just turn around and revealed Last Violent Call. So I cried for nothing. I was so physically unwell because of the ending of this book. I think another thing I love so much about this book, other than the obvious things like the characters, the romance, the plot, I obviously love those for all of these books, and I feel like I'm getting a bit repetitive just saying that now. But I love how Chloe Gong just included so many queer characters within this. You have trans characters, you have gay characters. I mean, in this one, I'm pretty sure you have demi characters. She just includes so much queerness, yet it's in a setting where obviously it's not easy to be a queer person. I feel like so many authors would have just taken the easy route and just not included any like queer characters, but I love how Chloe Gong just included so many and made it seem somewhat historically realistic. I just absolutely adored this series. It was so good. I can't believe in, I think, September we're going to be having to say goodbye for these characters. I don't know how I'm going to continue on. How am I supposed to never see any of the characters from this universe again? I can't do that. They're like my children. I love them, and we better get a happy ending, because the ending of this book, Chloe Gong, you will be hearing from my lawyer. This was criminal. Anyway, that is this series. So good. Next, stepping away from the fantasy for a minute, we have If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. Now this is a situation where I did not give this book a 5 stars. I actually gave it a 4.75. It was so close. So this follows a group of theatre students. They're at this really like elite school and they study like Shakespeare. And basically at the start of the book we find out that one of them has been in prison for 10 years for murder. However, he didn't actually commit it, and this is basically him telling what happened to lead up to the murder and like who the murderer was and why he went to jail for it. This is without a doubt just my all-time favorite dark academia book. It was just so good. I just genuinely throughout the whole book was just so desperate to find out what happened. I just could not put this down, and that ending, my god, again another heartbreaking ending. You better guess as soon as I finished this book I pulled up AO3 to read alternative ending fanfiction, because I was like, what was that? Like, I've never been so annoyed with a group of characters but yet so in love with them at the same time. Even if you don't love Shakespeare, because there are a lot of Shakespeare references in this, I've only read, I think, Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet because I've had to study them for school. This is still super accessible. You don't need to be like some major Shakespeare nerd or anything. The next book series we have is an incomplete series. This is The Dark and Hollow Star Saga by Ashley Shuttleworth. Can we also just talk about the fact that this is one of the most gorgeous, stunning covers I've ever seen. And then we have this, which is just so ugly. Like, what happened? How do you go from this to this? And the third one is also incredibly ugly. But this, I think it's gonna have 4 books. The third book is coming out in November, I want to say, which I need it now. I need that book in my hands right now. These books are so long, but I read both of them in like 5 days maybe. This is, if you're not aware, a fae book, and it's kind of a bit more of like an urban fantasy book, I want to say, because while you do have like the fae courts and the like sort of fae world, it's very much still set in like an urban city. We have 4 POVs. The first one, who is kind of our main POV, she definitely gets like the most POVs, which is annoying because she's my least favorite character out of all the main POV characters. It's been such a long time since I've read these books. I desperately need to do a reread. I'm not gonna lie, I have such a bad memory of what happened in these. I just know I love them. But we have Arlo. Now Arlo is half fae, and like her fae side, they're like, because there's like different courts, she's like the royal family for like one of the fae courts. She's not really like treated as well as like the rest of her family. She's kind of, because she's only half fae, she's not as like powerful, and she's really not treated that well, and she really wants to like just be like accepted. And then we have Nausicaa. I'm praying I'm saying that right. I don't know if I am. Now she was this type of fae called Fury. I can't like remember exactly what Furies were, but I think they were like the kind of fae that like protect all the other fae from like bad things. They're kind of like the police of the Feywild. But I could be remembering that wrong. She basically did something to get revenge and she ended up being like casted away from being a fairy. She's kind of like weakened and she's very angry. We kind of followed those two are together for a lot of the book, and there may be a sapphic slow burn romance subplot potentially. And then kind of at the other Fey court, although like halfway through the book they do end up like meeting and working together. So we have Vian. I don't know how to pronounce these fantasy names, I'm so sorry. Now he is like the prince of this Fey court. And then we also have Aurelian, and Aurelian is his bodyguard. Maybe there's sort of like a romance subplot between them as well. There's like this murders happening and they are at risk of exposing the Fae to the humans. So all of them kind of start figuring out what is going on and try to uncover and try to stop it. It was just so good. First of all, this is probably one of the most queer books I've ever read. There's not a single straight character in here, which I love. If you can think of any type of queer representation possible, it is probably in this book. On top of that, the romance subplots, they were all slow burn. I mean, they're still slightly burning. I just truly adored these books. The characters, the plot, they were just so good, and I highly recommend them, and I think these are so underrated as a series. The next book we have, again going a bit away from the fantasy, is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is definitely my all-time favorite romance book. Just the way I felt when I read this book, it was just so cute, and it was like a little warm hug, honestly. So if you are somehow not aware of the plot of this book, we follow Alex and Henry. Now Alex is the son of like the president of the United States, and Henry is like a prince of England. They end up having a little bit of a public fight at a wedding, I think, and they basically have to like pretend to be friends for the press. It's like a fake friendship, not fake dating, and then they fall in love and stuff. I just adored this book. It very much gave me like Wattpad-esque vibes in terms of the plot, although the writing was significantly better than most Wattpad books I've read. And I think that is what I loved about it so much. It just felt like very nostalgic. It was very like an unrealistic kind of book, but I think I like unrealistic things in my romance book. I loved the characters. I loved the side characters, obviously the romance. Like truly no other romance book has made me feel this way ever since. And the last favourite I'm going to be including in this video, although it's definitely not my last favourite book, I definitely need to make a part 2 to this, is Ironwood by Xiran Jay Zhao. Hope I say that name right. Very sorry if I'm not. I read this book January of this year, and honestly no book I've read this year has compared. This is a sci-fi book, and honestly, I would probably not have picked this book up for the concept. Apart from the fact it's been advertised as a love triangle resulting in polyamory, that is the main reason I picked this up. And while that was great, I actually ended up loving the plot, which I was not expecting going into this. The way I'm gonna have to wait almost a year for the sequel, I can't do that. I need to find out what happens. The ending of this book is the most shocking thing. I have probably, it's like definitely in like my top 3 plot twists of all time. I was not expecting that, and I need to find out what's gonna happen, and I need these characters to be okay. In this world, it's a very like misogynistic world, and basically there's this like war going on with these like aliens, and to fight the war they use these like, how do I like describe what they are? The blurb says giant transforming robots. So that is what they are. They're like giant animal robots. They are basically controlled by men, but they also need women to help control them. However, like the women always end up dying. Like it's very rare the women survive piloting these like robots. Now Zetian, I think it was her older sister, was killed by one of these people piloting the robots, and she basically wants revenge. So she signs up to become one of the like co-pilots in order to try and kill the person who basically is like responsible for her sister's death. However, somehow she survives her first battle, which is really rare. She basically decides that she maybe can try and like change the system to stop these girls from getting sacrificed. And then like shit goes down. Zetian is hands down the most badass, ruthless female main character I have ever witnessed. And I love that for her, honestly. Like, she could murder me and I would say thank you. And obviously the romance subplot was phenomenal. I mean, I've never read a love triangle ending in polyamory, and I now firmly believe there's no other option. And also the plot of this was phenomenal. I did not think I would be too interested in the whole like sci-fi robot alien aspect, but I enjoyed it so much. And again, that plot twist at the end, I was literally like shocked. I was just like staring at a wall like, what am I supposed to do now? The fact that I'm gonna have to wait until April 30th next year for the sequel, I can't wait that long. I cannot wait that long. I need that sequel in my hands right now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.